I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with Vyasar Ganesan. Vyasar Ganesan is a college counselor who works and lives in Austin, Texas, not too far from me, but was recently featured on the smash hit Netflix television show Indian Matchmaking. In this episode, we talk all about what brought him to Austin, what he likes about Austin, why he became a teacher, and then we jump headfirst into everything that is the television show Indian Matchmaking. It was a lot of fun. I'm pretty sure that Vyasar is going to be back because he was so engaging, so much fun to talk to. And if I'm being a little honest, there might be a little bromance thing happening here, at least on my side. I had so much fun with this guy. I could have talked to him for 3 or 4 hours, but I didn't want to do that to you, the listeners, to him, or to my wife, who's waiting for me right now for dinner. Talk to me, yeah. Welcome to the Fascination Street podcast. Vyasar Ganesan. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. I just finished a leg day workout, so if I pass out during the middle of this interview, it's not your fault, it's mine.
Well, I just finished, walking with my wife for 4 miles or something, and now I'm having a whole lot of beer. So if I pass out, it is your fault.
You're just having a great day. That's just what we call a good day in Texas.
That's right. All right, so a little bit of background for the listeners. Hey, all you streetwalkers, I'm talking to you. COVID is a thing, I guess. So you watch a little more TV than you normally would during COVID, I guess. I know that we have been. And one of the things that came up on Netflix, it said like 98% match. I don't know why, because we don't watch reality television, but maybe I do know why, because we love Indian culture. I don't mean American Indian. I mean actual Indian culture. And so this television show was called, or is called, Indian Matchmaking. My wife and I, as soon as it came up, we just looked at each other and we were like, do you want to watch this? And then the other one was like, hell yeah. So then we started watching it. And I think we watched either 1 a day or 2 a day until it was done. Like, I know that's not binging to today's millennials, but for old people like us, that is binge watching. It was amazing. We really, really loved it. And when I found out that one of the people on this show was a stone's throw from me in Austin, I was like, oh, I'm doing this. So all that to say that Vyasar Ganesan is one of the people on that show. So we're going to talk about that way later. But first, Vyasar, tell me about where you were born and raised, man. Where'd you grow up?
We moved to Austin when I was really young. I was born in New Hampshire, but we moved to Austin before I was 1 year old. So I like to tell people that I'm from here because I am. I mean, functionally I am. I did not ever know anything about it. I've never been to New Hampshire since my birth, and I don't remember it at all. I remember Austin. My earliest memories are of being in Austin. I grew up in South Austin, right off Slaughter and Manchac. So I'm a South Austin, born and bred. You couldn't make me live in North Austin if you tied me and dragged me screaming, kicking and screaming. I would not. I refuse to live. No disrespect to North Austin. It's just not for me. But
let me interrupt you to say maybe no disrespect from him, but 100% disrespect from me, because I think Austin is the worst city in Texas. I almost said America. No, just Texas.
Just Texas.
Mostly because of the traffic and because before being homeless was cool, Austin had all the homeless people in Texas.
That's true.
And I can't remember a time in my entire life when I've gone to Austin and it didn't take far too long because of traffic, and I wasn't accosted by people asking me for money and cigarettes. So I hate Austin. That said, my daughter lives in South Austin. She lives right off of, which is real close to you, right?
Yeah, real close.
Back to you. So you were in New Hampshire and y'all moved when you were 1?
Yeah, my parents split up and I moved to Texas, and I grew up here. I went to public schools my whole life. I grew up back when kids would still play outside, and that's what I remember for most of my childhood was just playing outside with my friends. And I've lived in a lot of different places, and my street growing up was the most diverse street I've ever lived on. I had Indian kids, Mexican kids, Puerto Rican kids, black kids, white kids. We had like just everybody around to play with. It was amazing. It wasn't a particularly long street or anything like that. The houses weren't particularly nice or big or expensive, but we just had people from such a huge array of backgrounds, and everyone just played with everyone else. And it was awesome. I remember just every time I would step outside, getting home from school or just over the summer, I always had people to play with. I always had a community around me. So it never felt weird or off-putting to just be in a single-parent household or to be an only child, because I had a street full of friends constantly around that was my family in that way. And that was really cool and exciting. I always remembered that. For high school, I went to LASA up in North Austin. It's a magnet school. I didn't want to go to North Austin, but Mom, again, dragged me kicking and screaming. And well, when you're under 18, not a lot you can do about that.
Don't spoiler alert the end of the LASA story. All right. We're going to get there.
Oh, yeah.
So you went to LASA. Go ahead.
Yeah, I went to LASA. It's a small liberal arts and science academy up in North Austin. It's a very great school. Just a phenomenal teaching staff, phenomenal people who work there. And just they pull students from all over the city. It was incredible because it was like, again, the street that I grew up on, it was like that in school. Instead of having like this one neighborhood of kids or this one ethnicity of kids or this one type of kid, everyone was there. The only thing that we had in common was that we were invested in their education, but we all practiced that investment in different ways. We had band kids who wanted to become doctors. We had jocks who were really into poetry. We had robotics kids who could basket weave with the best of them. You know, like we had just an amazing array of people at this school from all over the district. And it was great because I wasn't a particularly smart kid at this school. Like I wasn't math or science gifted. I was definitely more on the humanities and liberal arts side. There was still a lot of opportunities for me to pursue what I wanted to do and explore that world of writing and creating in that way. So senior year comes around and, you know, I was a pretty snotty kid. I decided I'm going out of state. I'm getting out. I'm traveling the world. I'm going to see it for myself. I'm going to be that person, living the high life. And of course, you know, I applied to UT Austin like everyone else. This is just when they had changed from top 10% to top 7% admission, or sorry, top 8% or 9% automatic acceptance. So state legislature in Texas says that if you're in the top 10% of your graduating high school class, you have automatic admission to any state institution in Texas.
Really?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But UT Austin is the one exception. The one exception.
Of course it is.
Of course, because here's Austin again. They got to be top 8% instead of top 10. So just keep the riffraff out, you know.
Yeah, you know, those garbage 9 and 10%ers. Ugh.
Yeah, exactly. So I was not even close to that. I was like in the bottom 25% of my class, and I got denied pretty quickly. I got offered something called the CAP program, which is the Coordinated Admission Program, where I could do a year at another UT school like UT San Antonio, UT El Paso, UT Rio Grande Valley, and then transfer back to UT Austin in my sophomore year as a full student. I also got accepted to University of Pittsburgh, and I got accepted to Allegheny College, a small liberal arts college in the Northeast. Turns out I applied without knowing that I had done so, early decision to Allegheny, which means I got accepted and I was going whether I liked it or not. I was contractually obligated to go. And my mom was furious. She was so angry.
That was an accident?
That was an accident. I had no idea that I did that on purpose. I was completely flummoxed because they sent me this invitation to apply. And I was like, well, I've heard of this school because my counselor gave me this book, Colleges That Change Lives, and it's organized alphabetically. Allegheny was the first school in the book. I was like, oh, yeah, that looks good. And then I signed up for their mailing list, and they sent me a golden ticket application, which is basically a free early decision application. I was like, oh, it's free. It's for me. And so I went ahead and applied early decision. They gave me a big scholarship, which was the only thing that for my mother was the only acceptable reason for me to go.
So was she upset because you picked a school so far away?
That was partially the reason. I also think that because she had never heard of it before, because I had applied early decision and it shut out all my other options, because that even with the scholarship I got, it was still going to be really expensive. And it was. But I was like, well, look, this is exactly what I want. I wanted a small liberal arts program without knowing that I wanted it. Like I really did. I didn't want to be at a 40,000 plus school. I wanted to get out of Texas. And this is as far away from Texas as I could get, really, without going out of the country.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. And I wanted snow. Not that I particularly liked snow, but I was like, I want something different for a while.
Yeah, when you grow up in one place, and I mean, you lived your whole life up until that point, because New Hampshire doesn't count, you were one. Yeah. So your entire recollection of being in a place is that exact same place. So, of course, the first thing you want to do is get the hell out.
Exactly.
And Austin and San Antonio, we're really close together. So we basically have the same weather. We have 2 seasons. We have summer that lasts 9.5 months, and then, maybe it's 10.5 months. And then we have winter, which lasts about 4 days or something. So
yeah, very, very brief.
I can totally understand wanting to get the hell out.
By the way, I agree with you. San Antonio rules. San Antonio is my favorite cities I've ever been to. It's such an amazing place.
Now, I see a Fiesta poster behind you.
That is from 2017 Fiesta. I stole that from the JW Marriott.
Holler!
So I got to college in Meadville, Pennsylvania. Never been there before. We didn't have a chance to visit there. Mom drove me up when we flew up from Pittsburgh. And the second we got to campus, our jaws dropped. It was gorgeous. Big trees, old red brick buildings, just the works. I mean, it was the most gorgeous place that either of us had ever seen at that point. And she was like, okay, you can stay. You can go here. And I was like, thanks. I was planning on doing it anyways. And it was amazing. It was the best 4 years of my life. And I was convinced I was going to be an English physics double major because I was like, I'm going to get the metaphysical understanding and the physical understanding of the world. And then I'll be complete. Turns out when you do a double major, you don't always get 2 degrees. And I was not happy about that.
I don't understand what's the point of a double major if you don't get both degrees.
When you're an overachiever, it feels really good to overachieve.
Well, no, I get it. Like, I understand doing a double major so that you have both degrees. I just don't understand the institutions that will let you double major and work your ass off and then not give you that second piece of paper. I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah. From an institutional standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense. Yeah. They'll cite a billion rules that say, like, well, because of our board and because of our charter, we're not able to grant 2 degrees to one student. I'm like, bullshit.
Well, because of my board and because of my charter, I'm not able to pay for both degrees. Yeah. So how about that?
Especially when there's so many schools that offer a 4+1 program now, right? Where you can do your bachelor's in 4 years and do your master's in another year. What's the difference? You do the same thing for a double degree program. Anyways, so I ended up doing an English major, physics minor, and I fell in love with writing and I fell in love with nonfiction. And I started writing a lot of essays and things like that. And I was like, man, this is really great. Like, I kind of want to be a college professor. But then, of course, between the years of 2008, 2012, the economy did some belly ups and belly downs and rolled over and did all the tricks that you teach your dog.
I was in banking for that. So, yes, I'm aware.
Not a great time. And so being a professor became a really terrifying place to be. And I said, ooh, like, maybe I need more time to figure out what I want to do. But I still like this a lot. So when you need more time and you don't know what you want to do, you apply to grad school. Just stretch your parents' goodwill as much as it'll allow.
Sure. I have a daughter. I understand what you're saying.
So I did more research this one. I was a little more diligent with my applications, and I applied all over the place, but I only got accepted to 2 places. University of Pittsburgh, a second time, and Columbia University in the city of New York. And it was incredible.
Now, Columbia used to be Queens College. Is that the one?
That is correct. It used to be Queens College.
All right. That's the one Hamilton talks about?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It's also the one that Ghostbusters got kicked out of.
I like your fact better.
It's also got like a nuclear reactor under campus.
Oh, that scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. Like, it's low grade and it's not like big gamma rays, but it's enough, like any amount of nuclear activity is enough.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So you get into Columbia, it's like, well, you kind of have to go to Columbia if you get in.
Mm-hmm.
So I beg and plead with the MFA office. I beg and plead with the professors in the financial aid office until I get enough scholarship money to make it even halfway affordable. It's like, okay, at least I can get loans to cover most of this, but I got to figure out how to pay for living in New York City. So I get to New York City and I just immediately start grinding and busting my hump. By the time I left New York, I was working 5 part-time jobs to pay the bills, pay rent, and I was splitting an apartment with 5 other people and with 1 bathroom.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You were splitting an apartment with 5 other people, and you had to have 5 jobs to pay for it?
Yeah. Let's see. Columbia has a theater called Miller Theater. It's a beautiful space. They do a lot of performing arts and events there. I was an usher there and a house manager, so I was the guy in charge of the ushers. Mailman School of Public Health on the Northern Columbia campus, further up the island. I worked there as a student intern for special projects, which is a really fancy way of saying I was the gopher guy.
Student, did you say intern?
Student intern for special projects. That was my title.
But that was a paid position?
That was a paid position. It was the best position on campus. I got paid $18 an hour.
As an intern?
As an intern. It was great. It was the highest paying internship I could find.
It's the highest one I've ever heard of.
I know. It was awesome. And I did that for 2 years, and it was great. I loved it. It was my first real introduction to public health as a field. And I was like, oh, this is a really interesting and dynamic field going on here. I also worked as an alcohol proctor, which is a very fancy way of saying that I went to university-sponsored events where liquor would be served and made sure 18-year-olds didn't try to sneak in.
Okay. All right. All right.
I was a Columbia University bouncer.
You're the most popular person on campus.
Basically. And my fifth job, it was another internship. My last year of grad school, I was an intern at the Food Network, which was a lot of fun. That was a really great gig to have because their office in New York is in the Chelsea Market, which is this massive warehouse conglomeration of buildings. It's gorgeous. And every time you leave the office, you can just grab food on your way out. Oh, it's so good. So that was a great gig.
I did know that you did work there. And so I guess you worked there for about a year.
Yeah, from January to May of 2014.
Tell me about your time there at the Food Network. Was it everything you thought it would be? What were your likes and dislikes about working for the Food Network? That is probably the network that we have watched the most over the past 15 years.
Yeah. Food Network's a really interesting place to work. So first and foremost, like the Food Network office there is technically the Scripps Network's office because Scripps owns HGTV, Food Network, Cooking Channel, Food.tv, and a bunch of other stations.
Oh, I'm going to pause you. Remember how you love San Antonio?
Uh-huh.
There is a television channel down here. It's KENS, right? Channel 5 or whatever. They sold the Food Network to Scripps.
That's right. I remember
Isn't that insane? I'm so sorry. Okay, go ahead.
No, you're good. It was a crazy deal to make. Yeah, so I was working with HGTV people, Cooking Channel people all over the place, but my title was editorial intern for the culinary department. Basically, I would edit Food Network website content. So I'd go to the website, and one of my first jobs was hunting down gluten-free recipes or recipes that were tagged with gluten-free that weren't actually gluten-free.
Oh, snap.
So it was just a really fun job because you're just hunting for like any recipe that's got flour in it, and then you mark it for deletion or you mark it to be rearranged somewhere. So it's a lot of like web editing from an editorial standpoint. But I also got to build like special holiday pages. Like I got to build the Food Network's Halloween page because they do all this prep months in advance. So I got to custom build their Halloween page for 4th of July and summer. They do a cheese ball page because apparently cheese balls are still a thing. People really love them.
Yeah, that explains America's weight problem. Go ahead.
But I got to build a whole page that was just cheese ball themed. It was amazing. Like we didn't have desks. We just had sort of long tables with thin dividers. And so the person sitting across from me ran like the social media department. The person next to me was a gifts officer for the Food Network. And so she always had goodies stacked on her desks of gifts that they received or gifts that they were sending out. And so she'd always be like, hey, no one wants this one. You want it? And I'm like, yeah, it's like a bottle of argan oil aged 4 years from the high mountains of Italy. And it's like $60 at the market, but she's giving it to me for free. I'm like, hell yeah, I'll take some argan oil. This is fancy as hell.
This is amazing. Right? I love this job.
And there was a studio right above us where they shot Chopped. And so sometimes when I was writing the elevator, I'd write it with just these really nervous people who are clutching like their bag of kitchen tools, just super anxious about going on Chopped. And sometimes there would be like the celebrity chefs that would be writing it too. It was cool to like just see them and be in that little elevator with them because you were told like, you can talk to them. It's okay. They're people. But I was so scared. I was always just so scared because like Chris Santos, because he's just a very intimidating person, very intimidating chef personality. I think I have his name right. I could be wrong. But he also used to be a boxer, like a professional fighter. And so I'm so scared of him.
Yeah, but you're 6'7", bro.
I know, but when you're 6'7" and 200 and some pounds, you're told that you have to be jolly and happy and friendly to like make people like you. Otherwise, they're scared of you all the time. But when you're short and muscled, you're just filled with rage all the time, you know?
Yeah, Napoleon. Yeah, I got you.
And that's, I feel like or at least that's the energy that people expect you to give off. So yeah, it was a great job. I loved working there. I got paid crappily. I worked 20 hours a week and I got paid $10 an hour. Not ideal, but it was so much fun that it made it worth it. At the end of it, they told us, okay, you guys can apply for jobs here. We'd love to have you on. I'll stay on. And I was the only intern who did not get hired.
Are you serious?
Only single one. And that really cemented my decision to move back to Austin because I was like, well, my lease is up in September.
I can't fucking afford to live here.
So that's really the thing about New York is when you have a full-time job, the only thing it allows you to do, it doesn't change anything about your living status except this. You can afford to live by yourself. That is the true mark of adulthood and like making it in New York City.
Yay.
That and crying on the subway.
I love it.
So I moved back to Austin 2014.
So I have interviewed a couple of people from the Food Network. I'm going to say all of them have been really cool. So I feel like they probably have a pretty decent culture over there. You hear all this, especially lately, you hear all this, toxic work environment, blah, blah, blah. And don't get me wrong, there has been some people from the Food Network who have gotten into some serious trouble over that, things like that. Oh, yeah. But none of the people that I've interviewed were in that camp, so they're dope. Now, real quick, I want to ask, I know that you and your mom, and just you two, moved from New Hampshire to Austin when you were a little kid, when you were 1, but I don't know why you picked, or why your mom picked Austin. I know why you left, but why Austin?
Mom has a lot of Indian friends in the U.S. So when she moved here, she made a lot of Indian friends quickly. She had some friends who had moved down here as well. Part of it was also my dad. That my parents were going through a really hard time. They were separated and they were planning on getting divorced. At the same time, my mother also didn't want me to not have a father. She thought that, I shouldn't be by myself without my father. And so Dad had mentioned that he could work in Austin, that Silicon Labs is here, Bell Labs is here, there's companies here that he could work for. And so my mom's like, well, fine. Like, I want you to be able to see your son. I want your son to be able to see you. We can move to Austin too. And so we all moved to Austin separately, but together.
That is a great explanation. I did not know the part about your dad also moving there. So thank you for filling in that gap. I think and statistically, I believe this bears out, I think that one of the biggest problems that we face as a nation right now is absentee fathers. Mm-hmm. I think that they make more of an impact, even if they're assholes. I think they make more of an impact just being there. So I think it's really, really cool that your mom had the foresight to say, look, things aren't working out between me and you, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be an influence to your kid. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Props to your mom on that. She's a genius. Yeah, that's awesome.
She was ahead of her time on that one for sure. And I think also it's just smart parenting from a single mom's perspective, especially when you're moving to a new city, you got a new house, you got to figure out all this stuff. It's helpful to have someone else who can just take the kid for a week or a weekend. So you can, have some time for yourself, or really
so you don't kill them.
So you don't kill them. Exactly. I was not a great kid. I was one of those kids who loved drumming. Like, I loved getting pots and pans and beating them with wooden spoons. But I really loved doing it when other people were in the kitchen, when they were cooking, like busy doing something else. I just loved being the disruption right there. It was a lot of fun for me.
So since you brought up drumming on pots and pans, I'm going to tell a little story that I'm going to preface with, rest in peace, Edward Van Halen.
Oh, Eddie Van, yeah.
When Edward Van Halen and Alex Van Halen were very, very young, one Christmas, they got musical instruments from their parents. Alex got a guitar and Eddie got drums. And then they switched and ruled the world. So rest in peace, Eddie. You made an impact. I hope you have a great time up there, wherever you are. And let's get back to you, man.
Actually, brief shout out to Eddie. When I was applying for scholarships, the first scholarship I applied to was Eddie Van Halen's air guitar scholarship. And I got second place. You know who beat me? His son, Wolfgang Van Halen.
Are you shitting me?
I'm not shitting you. Wolfgang Van Halen beat me in the air guitar contest. Wolfie? Which, let's be real, like Wolfgang Van Halen is a sick air guitarist. The kid can shred like nobody's business. So he earned it, but yeah.
Also, he earned a spot on the team. He was the bass player for Van Halen. Yeah. That's amazing. You got beat out by a professional legacy musician. Oh, dude, hold your head high. I'd put that on I'd wear that on a t-shirt. That's amazing.
Hey, Streetwalkers. Here's a word from our sponsors.
You know those popping phone handle things that you see on everyone's phones nowadays? Well, how would you like to put your logo on them? Does your podcast or band need new merch? Do you want to bring attention to your new book or film? Maybe you need something unique for your Patreon or crowdfunding campaign. Then visit thelogopop.com, where you can customize them with the logo of your podcast, band, business, art, school mascot, or whatever else you can think of. These are way more affordable than you may think at thelogopop.com. Mention where you heard this ad and get free shipping on your entire order. Remember, that's thelogopop.com to order your custom popping phone handles. That's thelogopop.com.
Let's get back into it.
All right, so I know that in the Indian culture, a lot of focus is put on education.
Right.
I don't know if it's the same way now, but the Indian families used to really try to point their kids in the direction of doctors and...
Doctor, lawyer, engineer.
There you go. And I think lawyer is starting to fall out of favor.
It's business now. It's doctor, finance, law, engineer. Like finance, business, startup. Everyone's got to have a startup. That's the new shtick.
So I know that you didn't go down either one of those paths. You chose a very interesting path, and I want to know why. First, tell everybody what it was, but then tell me why. What made you so passionate about the career path that you chose?
I was really lucky to always have really amazing teachers and educators across the field. And
at where?
At Lhasa, when I went to high school there, and at Allegheny College and at Columbia University. Across my entire life of education, from high school on, really, I was really, really lucky to have just incredibly talented people teaching me and fostering, just telling me, you can do whatever the hell you want. Love it enough and do it.
Let me pause you. Do you think that you were fortunate enough to have amazing teachers, or do you think that you were looking for a reason to find them amazing? Does that make sense? Yes, that does make sense. That's a really good way of putting it. And I think there's definitely in high school, especially in a magnet school like Lhasa, there's definitely a worshipful culture of teachers that we definitely idolize them. We definitely see them as the ultimate authority figures. We definitely see them as people who hold our lives in their hands and carry us forward. Your futures, yeah.
Yeah, they really do. But I also think the teachers see themselves in that way. And some of them use their powers for good, and some of them use it for evil. But I think fundamentally I had more good than bad. I had the ones who really tried. Now, as a college counselor, I work with a lot of my former teachers. And, I get to see them do that. I can confirm, they're still that amazing in that way. I really do feel that.
So that said, you work at Lhasa.
I do.
So you work at the school that you graduated from.
Yeah.
How weird is that?
I try to tell people that I'm not the pathetic loser who never left high school. I'm the kind and courageous soul who came back to his community to
I'm the cool guy who came back.
Exactly.
You hear all those stories like, oh, Christy Brinkley is from this town or Claudia Schiffer's from that town. Well, guess what? They fucking left. This dude came back. That's what you should brag about, Austin.
Austin's my home. It's always going to be my home. As terrible as it is, I'd love it. And it's never going to not be my home. And it was too hard to stay away. Also, New York City does not have any good Tex-Mex. Let's get real. You will never, ever in a million years find a better place to get Tex-Mex than Texas. It's just a fact. And I'm not willing to sacrifice that. I'm just not.
I've been there. I've been around the world, and I agree with you, my friend.
Yeah, it's just the only way to go. So it is weird, but I think the best part about it is that I know exactly what my students are going through. I know which teachers are the hard ones. I know which classes are the hard ones.
Because they're still there.
Because they're still there. Because they're all still there, and things haven't changed all that much. And just I know what it's like to be a smart kid at a school full of smart kids. That's a very specific experience to have, and I've had that, so it makes me a better counselor for it.
That makes sense. Oh, and for those listening, the reason that school hasn't changed that much is because this dude just barely turned 30, right? Last month. Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I picked this field because I kept thinking I have been given this amazing gift of education. I really have. And the only thing that I can do to pay that gift back is to teach, is to get an education, is to do as much as I can to pay it forward and just to keep passing on what I have learned to the next generation. Because I do believe in that. I think a lot of people want to give back because it makes them feel good, because it does. It does make you feel good to give back. But right. I also think that there's value in giving back because you feel lucky, giving back because you feel grateful, giving back as an act of recognizing how lucky you were and recognizing that not everybody had the same chance as you did.
You're going to make me cry, dude.
Sometimes you find a calling or a purpose and it hits. That's what it is. Because I spent grad school doing almost the exact opposite. Columbia is not a place where you can teach. Like the MFA, most MFA programs around the country, you're going to be a teacher and a writer. They're accepting you into the program with the expectation that you're going to teach a few undergraduate writing classes. You might teach a few graduate level courses. You might do this, you might do that to help pay your way through the program. Columbia is not that.
It sounds like an internship.
It does, right? But you get paid a lot better than that internship. Columbia is not that place. They don't really offer a TA position like that or anything. Because for their perspective, you're here to write. You're here to learn how to be a writer. So that's all you're going to do. And so that's all I did. Every single week, I was reading 2 to 3 books. Every single week, I was writing 30 to 40 pages. I was producing volume at an insane amount. And I loved it. I had such an amazing time. And it didn't matter if I was writing crap. I was having fun doing it. But it didn't feel right still, because I was like, something is missing. I'm not feeling like I'm giving back. And so I started looking for teaching opportunities. And I taught at a couple of different places around the city. I taught at the Columbia Summer High School program. And I really loved working with the high school students there. So when I got back to Austin, I thought, okay, well, that's what I really enjoyed. Let me see if I can keep doing that while I figure out the writing thing. And I kept loving it. When I got my job at Texas State, it was my first full-time job that I've ever had.
At Texas State?
Yeah, in San Marcos.
That's where my daughter went to college.
Hey, nice. Eat 'em up cats. Not a great football team, but a great school. No, and I loved it. It was the exact job I wanted. It was a university that was close to South Austin, but I had the entirety of the city of Austin as my recruiting territory. So I would get to drive around the city and relearn it and relearn traffic patterns and get to explore Leander and Round Rock and places I'd never been as a child, while also getting paid and recruiting students. And it was awesome. And it was the most money. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was more money than I'd ever making before.
Sure.
And I began to realize, like, I have a passion for helping kids get to college, like, because I think it's important, and it may not be for everybody, but for those who it is, like, I want to make sure that it's a possibility for them. And so I did that for 3 years until this opportunity came up at LASA. And I said, well, this is perfect. This is where I want to be. I don't have to work on the weekends anymore. I don't have to wake up at the crack of dawn to go to college fairs. Instead, I get to go to the same school every day, work with the same kids every day, build relationships with them and their families.
And you were there for 4 years or whatever, so you know the school. You know the layout.
I know the school. I know the layout. I know the lay of the land. It's been a trip. It's been really, really great. And I think now more than ever what I realize that my purpose has very little to do with education. There's a saying in Hinduism, or just a name for God, called Bhagwan. And Bhagwan literally translates to he who makes others great. And I really, I sat on that for a while before I realized, that's my purpose, is he who makes others great. It's not about self-aggrandizement. It's about giving back in a way that creates greatness for other people. And this is a job that exactly fulfills that sense of purpose. I have the same conversation with all of my seniors every year, at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. Find a college that fulfills your purpose. Write an essay that is a purpose-driven essay. Apply for scholarships that match that same sense of purpose. When you build a sense of purpose around your identity, it makes everything really, really easy. But paradoxically, right, it's the hardest thing to do when you're 17. It's the hardest thing in the world to do when you're a teenager, because no one has ever asked you to do that before.
And I kind of feel like they shouldn't. You shouldn't have to decide what you're going to be when you're 65, when you're 17.
Right. But I think that's the thing. Purpose is bigger than major. Purpose is bigger than career. Purpose is bigger than the job that you retire from. You shouldn't have to know what you want to do. That's one of the biggest failings about the college system. I wholeheartedly agree. You shouldn't have to pick a major when you apply. You shouldn't feel pressured into doing this one thing for the rest of your life, because the data shows that most people change their jobs anywhere from 9 to 27 times before they find the job that they retire from. So the whole notion of picking a major is ridiculous if you're going to change your jobs anyways, if you're going to figure it out anyways. Colleges will let you change your major anyways,
right.
too.
I mean, on that note, half the comedians that are popular right now have a law degree.
Yeah, it's so true.
So crazy.
God.
I don't know anybody who's using their degree, except for my wife, who's a master's prepared psychiatric nurse. I don't know anybody who's using the degree that they got. Well, except you.
And see, using your degree, I also am not a fan of, because I think, for some things, degrees have obvious applications. Audiology, speech therapy, those are things that have real applications, that have real consequences, and have real purpose in that way. But you can't tell me I don't use my degree every day. On a real practical level, I'm editing essays every day for students. Sure. But also, my degree informs my sense of life. My degree informs my sense of purpose, and my degree informs who I am. So just by walking around and learning and doing, I use my degree.
Yes, I'm so glad that right before you said that I said, except you. So I'm really glad I said that. So the sense of purpose seems to be a really big deal in your ethos. Do you think that is because you were raised Hindi?
Yeah, yes and no. Hinduism is very clear on your purpose. Hinduism is your purpose is to find God, that you're very lucky to have this human life, so you got to use it right, and you got to find God in this lifetime, because who knows the next time you could be reincarnated as a human. The Hinduism apparently has broken this down statistically. A human is reborn as a human once in 237,000 years.
That's a lot of years.
It's a lot of years. That's a lot of years to spend as a tree, as cicadas, as every kind of bacteria. It's a long time. So the whole notion is that you're purpose-driven. Is like, this is your purpose. Like, commit to that, make that the thing. And that definitely informed a little bit of it, is like of that seeking for purpose and knowing that purpose. But I also think that just like knowing about Hinduism helped inform my purpose. Like knowing that that's what Bhagwan meant. My education informed my purpose, because it wasn't just my education at my school. It was my education at my temple. It was my education from talking to the priests who came and spoke. It was my education from talking to other people at the temple and my friends there, and older people and younger people, and just my education across the board. I think that is what informed it. We know that education is a silver bullet. We just know it. Like if you have a good education, it unlocks doors that you would have never thought possible. It creates opportunity that is closed to people who don't have a good education. It's what's so important about it. We know that it can be the silver bullet for poverty, for drugs, for crime, for every single major affliction that's afflicting this country right now. Ignorance, fake news, conspiracy theories. Education is what solves all of those things. A good education can take you so much further than all of those problems. It's what creates greatness. Having that tied to that sense of purpose in that way is important. And to be frank, this isn't something I figured out 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. This is stuff that I figured out in the last 2. So I'm still very much at the beginning of this.
You should be a teacher. You're passionate. You're passionate like a crazy person. That's awesome.
I'm a little crazy. I'll be the first to admit that I like to rant.
I want to just real quick. I know that you said you grew up on a diverse street. I love that you explained what diversity means, because I think that the actual definition of diversity is lost right now. But I love that you grew up on a diverse street. And every time I've been to Austin, which is way too many, like I said before, from my perception, it is one of the whitest towns in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of those. It's one of the whitest major cities in Texas, if not the whitest major city.
Oh, yeah.
And so I want to know, how did growing up Hindi affect your life in Austin, or vice versa? Like, is there a big Indian population? And that doesn't even matter, really. Like, is there a big Hindi population? Because I know there's a couple of different religions in India.
There are. I think so. Indians make up about 18% of the city. I know that, around that.
Of Austin?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I would not have guessed that.
We're a pretty sizable chunk of the city at this point.
That's amazing.
That may have decreased. We'll know more once we get the census data, assuming that people actually honor their census, if we get the census data.
If on that one.
But yeah, we do make up a pretty decent chunk of the city, but it's mostly in suburban areas, or mostly like UT students and things like that. And it was interesting because I grew up going to this temple out in Southwest Austin, and we took a field trip there when we were in high school. Lots of students and me took a field trip out there when I was in high school. And I was like, well, this isn't really a field trip. This is just a Sunday visit on a Wednesday.
Yeah, you're off. I go here all the time. Why is this a trip?
I go here all the time. I don't even see what the big deal is. But like everyone was so floored, like, oh my God, you've got peacocks, you've got this massive, beautiful building. Like, what's it like? Like, why do people wear the dots in their heads? I'm like, all right, like, this is like a very weird way to be confronted about all of my cultural things.
So then you had to be the guy who explained that to everybody? Like, that fell on you?
Constantly. I have been explaining Indian culture to white people for my entire life.
Just white people?
Well, mostly just white people. It's funny because I feel like people of other colors definitely get it a lot faster, or pick up on it a lot faster, because there's so much we have in common, I think. Like, there's a lot of overlap between Hispanic culture and Indian culture. The emphasis on cooking.
Rice, beans, and a tortilla.
Exactly. Rice, beans, and a tortilla. Even black culture as well. There's a lot of overlap there. Like cornbread, collard greens, and black-eyed peas. We have makki ki roti, corn tortillas. Sarson ki saag, which is collard greens and spinach, like cooked down like saag paneer, basically. And black-eyed pea dal, which is just like a lentil soup with black-eyed peas. It's the exact same dish. It just looks different and is slightly flavored different.
That's amazing.
It is. So there's a lot of cultural overlap between the two cultures. I also think they understand each other better because historically, Indians, black people, and Mexicans have all been intermixed in this country for a lot longer than people thought. When California was being redeveloped and turned from desert into farmland.
Oh, I love when you tell this story. Yeah, do it.
California was being terraformed and turned into from desert to farmland paradise and growing. And like, that's why like all these California farms exist now. They were flying in Indian farmers from Punjab and other valleys in India to work on those farms with Hispanic workers, with immigrant workers from Mexico. And so you have a huge history of these cultures intermarrying. You go to California, you go to any of the farm countries in California, you will find people whose names are like Raul Hernandez Singh, or Ravi Maya Santos, because there's still a history and a lineage of Indian-Mexican intermarriage and mingling. Same thing on the other side of the country. There's a book called Bengali Harlem by this author named Vivek Bald, and it documents the history of Bengali traders coming from Bengal to the U.S., setting up shop in Louisiana and New York, and running a huge river trade of Oriental goods and silks and spices up and down the river. And they would marry families that were local here. They would marry Puerto Rican families. They would marry Creole families in Louisiana. And there's still a history of that exists today. So there's a lot more just like cultural understanding in that way because we have a history together. I'm not going to say that like they're not problems between us, because they think there's a huge problem with like Indian men who think it's okay to say the N-word and people who try to be black. It still exists in Indian culture for sure. They get a pass for being Indian. On the Hispanic side as well, there's some issues there because it's the notion of, well, we're both brown, but my minority stereotype is very different than your minority stereotype. I get called a terrorist, you get called an illegal immigrant. I get called a computer engineer, you get called a wetback. You know, it's a really tricky space that we navigate in both being brown that deserves more study and deserves more looking into. We are both brown, but it's a very different experience of being brown.
Right. That makes 100% sense.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Guess what, Streetwalkers? The gear is here. A bunch of you have been asking for quite some time, and now finally it's here. Head over to FascinationStreetPod.com and check out the gear tab. There, you'll find all kinds of FSP items to tickle your fancy. T-shirts, coffee mugs, sticker packs, pins, buttons, coasters, and my personal favorite, for just $5 you can get one of those weird little phone handle pop thingies. So head to FascinationStreetPod.com and show the world that you're proud to be a streetwalker. Special thanks to my good buddy Stephen O'Reilly from the Bar Star Podcast for these dope drum beats. Check out Steve's work at O'Reilly Drums on Instagram or search Stephen O'Reilly on YouTube.
Let's get back into it.
And this is going to sound like an abrupt 180, but I just looked at the clock, and I think we need to talk about Indian matchmaking.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I seriously could talk to you forever. This could be like a fucking 9-part series because you're so engaging and you're so knowledgeable. But in the interest of brevity...
Yeah, right here, this is where listeners are tuning out.
How dare you? You would be surprised. You know all about metadata.
Yeah.
They stay till the end for just about every episode. So
that's true.
Thank you, my people.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Vyasar, I want to talk about Indian matchmaking. Like I said at the top of the show, my wife and I absolutely loved it. There's a few things that I have a problem with. Remember I said that I was listening to you on a few episodes of other podcasts? I like to do that to sort of help research or whatever. I'm livid at Netflix when I found out how much money you made on that TV show.
I didn't make any money. They didn't pay me at all. Seriously.
That's why I'm so pissed off.
Well, because it's a docuseries. You can't pay people to be on a documentary. You get a different person if you pay them for a documentary.
Well, guess what? Netflix paid somebody. How come it wasn't you? Did they pay Auntie from Mumbai?
Oh, Seema Kapadia from Mumbai. Yeah, they definitely paid her, but they were also like flying her around.
Right.
Yeah,
she's the star, right?
Yeah.
So she's the star of the show, and if there's more seasons, it will revolve around her and her client list, right?
For sure.
Do you have any idea if she's contractually obligated to pretend her last name is from Mumbai?
Probably.
Everybody who hasn't watched this, or even if you have, go back and rewatch it. You could play a drinking game with every time that young lady says where she's from, which is every time she introduces herself. Yeah. It's super cool. I'm sure there's a reason, and I feel like it's sort of a snooty one. Like, oh, hi, I'm from Mumbai.
It's definitely a little snooty. Indian culture revolves around location, the location game. Where are you from? I might know someone who's related to you. Oh my God, we're related. Like building that relation, especially with a matchmaker, is crucial because it makes the family more willing to work with you.
Okay.
When you find out when you like, oh, we may not be related, but we know the same person, you're like, okay, at least I can follow up with the other person like, hey, is she legit?
Like how your cousin used to dance with that other lady from the show.
Yeah, Nadia, exactly. My cousin Ruby up in New Jersey also used to dance on the same team with Nadia.
There you go. So let's go back to, first, I know you don't drink. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
You're the designated driver of all your friends?
I am always designated driver. I like to say I match my level of crazy to the level of people drinking. So the drunker people get, I always try to get a little crazier too. The problem is I'm a bad judge of it. So I'll end up doing something really stupid and everybody will be like, whoa, calm down. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good, guys. Like, what do you want? I'm not on anything, guys. I'm good.
Nice. People are trying to take your keys away. You're like, no, seriously.
Seriously, let me try.
So is there a reason that you don't drink and that you're a vegetarian?
For the longest time, it was because of Hinduism, but other good reasons got added to it as well. When I was in college, it was just cheaper to not drink. Like, I didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah, no shit.
And I spent all my money on food and comic books. Those were my two biggest priorities at the time. And so I never really developed a drinking priority at all. It was never something that appealed to me. I don't like the taste of it. I don't like the smell of it particularly. I like the history of alcohol is really interesting. I'm a big fan of the history of beer. History of wine is a lot more fun, I think, than the history of beer. But it's an interesting subject to delve into, and especially having done a lot of food research and food writing and working for the Food Network, you learn a lot about how alcohol pairs with food and the preparation of alcohol. So that subject is interesting to me academically, but it just never really intrigued me, as an adult. I just made my first thing with wine recently, though. That was really exciting. I made this really good bulgur risotto, and I tossed a little wine in there. It was real nice.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Yeah. Bulgur wheat is awesome anyway, and if you're going to do it risotto style, that just sounds dope.
Oh, it was buttery like a biscuit.
Now, I know that you cook a lot, right? That's sort of one of your passions. You have many passions. You're a very passionate man.
I like to say, knowing a little bit of everything makes life sweeter. Doing a little bit of everything makes life a hell of a lot sweeter.
And you know what? It also makes it interesting, right? It makes it so much more fun.
Mm-hmm.
So good on you. Golly, I could talk to you forever. Amazing.
I'm having a good time. It's good.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. And we don't live too far away, so maybe we can hang out.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Once this COVID thing is over.
Yeah.
How did you find out about the show?
I was in a work meeting in 2018, and someone texted me the call for the show. It was a friend of mine who lives in Hollywood, and he was like, hey, I think you'd be a great fit for this. I was like, not really interested. 6 other people within the next 60 minutes send me the same invite for the show and say, oh my God, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. I said, fine, if you'll get you off my back, I'll do it. So I applied for it, but once I started interviewing for it and actually writing the materials for it, I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. There's something here. And I thought, you know what? If I fall in love with the person I'm going to marry because of a Netflix reality show, it will not be the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me. And I can live with that.
So did these people reach out to you because they felt like you needed to get married, or because they felt like you're such an engaging character and charismatic dude that you would be great on camera?
I think it's a little bit of both. Indians, we love a good wedding. And so any excuse to have another wedding, we'll jump on it. It's always a good time.
Yeah, but you can't have a wedding in Austin. Where are you going to get the elephants from?
Well, you don't always need a wedding. My cousin's wedding in Philly in 2015, we didn't have a white horse for the groom. We had a white Maserati.
It should have been a Ferrari because that's a horse. Oh, I love it, though. That's really cool. So what made you say yes? Just to get those people to shut up until you were like, hey, this sounds cool?
Basically, and also just because I had tried the online dating thing, it hadn't worked out. I was recovering from my last relationship, and I was like, all right, this is a time to try new things and do new things. I don't think I'm going to get it. I'm not good looking enough. I'm too weird. They're not going to look for that kind of person. What the hell? I'll just try it. Let's try something new and different just to get back out there. And it was just a great way to meet Indian people, whether it was people who work on the show, the women that I would go on dates with. I have friends, and I have Indian friends, but it's never a bad thing to feel more connected to the Indian American experience across the country. And I feel really lucky that I got to do this because this is the only way I would have met these people. It's the only way I would have met Manisha and Rashi or Seema or anybody who worked on the show. And I feel grateful, and I'm happy that I got to do that, because I think there was a part of me when I was filling out the application that this is a huge opportunity to connect with Indians on a level that you've never done before.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes 100% sense. I know that you still keep in touch with most or some of those people through Facebook groups and whatnot. Do you think that some of these people are going to be, I don't want to say lifelong friends, but do you think some of these people are going to be friends with you for a long time? Not all of them, but some of the people on the show seem like really, really cool people.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've made a ton of friends over the internet that turned into IRL friends, and I've made a ton of people who are friends now that started out as, podcast guests. And so I'm wondering if you got nothing else out of this, are you going to take away some really, really great friendships?
I think so. I really think so. I'm really happy that we get to talk and hang out every once in a while, me and these other people, because I think at the end of the day, some of them will definitely be lifelong friends because we connected. Some of us definitely have a real connection that's important to me. And I think some of us will be lifelong acquaintances because we have this weird thing that connects us now. We have this one thing that we have in common that is so huge that it's impossible to ignore, that we are always going to be connected in that way. Now, I'll give you an example. Aparna and I both live in Texas. Aparna lives in Houston. I live in Austin. And she was a huge force on the show. And we have actually become better friends. But it's also to the point where we can't really hang out right now or do anything. It's not like we talk every single day. But if I need something or if I need help with something, I know that I can always ask her, hey, I have kind of this question about this thing I'm doing with the show, or have you heard this thing? And if she has a question about something, she always reaches out to me. And so we have an acquaintanceship that I know is going to last forever because Aparna is really, really good at staying in touch with people. She calls at least one person from the show that she met on a date or whatever every single day.
Really?
She's really good about yeah. Oh yeah. She was really, really good at staying in touch. And B, just again, knowing that we both went through this experience together creates a level of familiarity and trust, I think, that makes it really easy to stay friends and stay connected.
It's a shared experience.
Yeah, it's a shared experience. Exactly.
Very cool. I love that. What's really funny is that I had an entire page of questions, but it was such a free-flowing and wonderful conversation. I don't think I got to most of these. Maybe any of them. This is amazing.
I love going off the rails. Going off the rails is my specialty.
It's one of my favorite things. I really love just having a conversation. What did you hope to gain from being on that show?
I wasn't expecting to get married. I was hopeful. I was willing to try it.
Would you have?
Yeah. I mean, if I found the right person and if we were able to get enough off-screen time together to really get to know each other.
Like a secret third date like that?
Yeah, like a secret third date. Exactly. I actually did have a secret third date with Rashi.
That's why I said it.
It was in between our first and second date. We just went on a little walk in downtown Austin. It was really nice. Her brother was with us too. He'd never seen the city, and so we were walking around. It was a great time.
Now, was that the same young lady that you completely destroyed a ping pong bar with? I know the guy who owns that bar, and he called me, and he was like, dude, you are not going to fucking believe what just happened here. No, I'm totally kidding. I don't know anybody like that.
No, Spin is a cool place. I've been there a couple times since then. I was really happy that we got to go. I could have never afforded that place on my own, so it was really nice that Netflix paid for that one.
Well, I'm glad they paid for something.
I know. No, they paid for, anytime you see me paying for a date or see someone paying for a date on the show, it's with Netflix's credit card. And let me tell you, there is no greater feeling of power in this world than the feeling of I have Netflix's credit card right now. It's just a flimsy piece of plastic, but it's got the Netflix logo on it. I could slam this down at the Southwest Airlines counter and get invited to the VIP XX Black Club in the back.
You should have said at the Maserati dealership.
Yeah, at the Maserati. That too. That'd be pretty sweet. No, they were pretty stingy about it. They're okay, pay for it and give it back. Pay for it and give it back. But it was a powerful feeling holding that card.
Would you be on a second season?
If I was still single, probably, yeah. If I was not single and the person I was dating was open to it, sure. The person I'm dating right now, it's something we've actually talked about a few times.
How could you not?
Yeah. We'll think about it. At the very least, just getting on for the first episode saying hi, we're okay. This is who I'm dating. Things are great. And then moving on.
Just checking in, I hope. All right, cool. We'll see you later.
Exactly. Just to give people closure, move on, and we're done.
The person that you're dating now, and this is a bizarre question, you do not have to answer it. The way that your storyline ended, first of all, was one of the most frustrating and angering things I've ever seen in my life.
Gotta get that cliffhanger that begged for a season 2.
I had to fight my wife for the remote to decide which one of us was going to throw it through the TV. We were really angry that we didn't get to see your storyline play out. So the last thing that they showed you do was make a phone call because you didn't have to, I guess, but you wanted to address something that was in your family history.
Right.
Not necessarily your history, but in your family history. And the whole show talks about how important family and family history and family hierarchy and all of that. So I understand why the producers made that happen. But how often, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4th date, what date is that an appropriate conversation to have? Like this young lady that you're seeing right now, did she know you from the show?
Yeah. She watched the show before I started talking.
So she already knew the conversation that needed to be had.
Yeah.
But if you're dating somebody who hasn't seen the show and doesn't know that particular piece of information, what number date is that conversation? Like, I'm so confused. Like, how?
It's a hard calculus. You know, it's a really hard calculus. Like, I'm a pretty open person. Like, I'll get vulnerable with people. I have no problem talking about it, but it's not an easy conversation to have still. And I think that there's no target number. I think with some people I've dated, I never told them. There were some people I dated for whom it was like the middle of our first year that we had the conversation.
So there's some people out there who you dated and they just found that out because they watched the show and they went, oh, what the shit?
Yeah, because they knew some weird stuff that happened with my dad. But they knew my parents were separated, but they were weird about it. They were like, oh, we don't really want to know about it. Like, we don't want to like push him on it. We're just having a good time. Let's focus on the good. Let's focus on the good. And that's what you want. When the other person wants to focus on the good, you want to focus on the good.
Sure.
Usually it just doesn't come up in that context. It really comes down to trust. I think when you get to a point in the relationship when you trust the person and you know that they're not going to run because you show them who you are, that's when you tell them, I think. When you find someone who can accept you for being who you are. Now, there's lots of ways that we show who we are, right? Whether that's like screwing up, making a mistake, or doing something great. Like the important thing is finding someone who can like create forgiveness, create acceptance, create space for conversation, and like something like a real adult relationship. That's one of the things I'm proudest about with the person I'm dating right now is that we're able to have real adult conversations and like create space for vulnerability. And if one of us is having a shitty day and lashes out at the other person, we're able to just like say, okay, let's take a step back and talk about it. Like, let's talk about what just happened. Let's break down like this anger and projection. And we're able to do that just as effectively as saying, this is a conversation that we can't have right now, but we're going to have it later. And we recognize that it's important to have later. That feels really good to me, that we're able to like maneuver in that space. This is a healthy adult relationship? This is what I've been missing my entire life? Damn, this is great.
Yeah, I think also, you know, going back to what I said earlier about one of the biggest problems that I think faces our nation is an absent father. I think that not only is that a problem with behavior and learning how to navigate life, but I think also maybe even more impactful is that you don't have a template. What is a healthy relationship? If there's no dad around and something happened, and as a child, you shouldn't and don't usually know all of the things that transpired to make that relationship not work. And so not only is there not, you know, that representation of the other partner for your parent, for your mom in this case, for you to look at and see as an example, but also there's that missing piece of, well, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
And so in your little kid mind or as you're growing up, you're like, well, I have no idea what happened. So humans like to finish the story. So we just imagine what could possibly have happened. Maybe it was this, maybe it was that. So then not only do you not have the other person who's supposed to help guide you and navigate you through, you know, young adulthood and learning to be an adult, but then also you have no representation of what a healthy relationship is supposed to be, what it looks like, how to deal with conflict in a relationship. So I think that everything that you just said about your current relationship is extraordinary. I don't know how you got to a place, you're only 30. I don't know how you got to a place where you can see all that. It's sort of like you're standing over it and just looking at all this stuff and saying, oh, you know what? I'm going to take this piece and put it over here because that makes more sense.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like those little, pardon me for saying this, those little nerd-ass figurines you were painting, you know? It's like you're your own dungeon master of your life.
Yeah.
You're like moving all these pieces around, and I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, you get to
not painting nerd figures. That's not cool. But the other part where you're the dungeon master of your own life, and I think that's a really cool place to be.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're not going to be the hero of your own story, that's one thing. That's another problem I can't help you with. But at the very least, you should feel like you're the author of your own story. You should feel like you have the ability to make change happen and the ability to decide which elements of the story you want to highlight, focus on, and deal with, and which, like, ugly monsters need to rear their head at the appropriate moments. Like, you can kind of set that for yourself. That's one of the things I feel most grateful for in my life, is that I'm at a point where I do feel that, for sure. That's a good way of putting it.
Well, you should feel grateful. A lot of people get into their 60s and 70s and they're not there yet.
Yeah.
So that is really pressure on your part. Good job. God, as much as I hate to do this, Vyasar, before I let you go, is there anything that we didn't talk about or I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about tonight?
I mean, you brought up the Dungeons and Dragons and you insulted my painting hobby, so I think we're pretty good. No, I'm kidding.
Well, you know what? I used the word nerd, and that's not derogatory anymore, so there you go.
Well, nerd ass, but yeah. No, I think it's just a quick aside on this one, too. Like, it is really cool to see that nerd culture has become so mainstream that my stack of Dungeons and Dragons books over here and my stack of comic books and board games over here is seen as like a cool thing and like a widely accepted thing now in culture. At the same time, it's deeply unsettling to me because for years, I was ostracized for it. I was told that this is the reason you're never going to find a girl.
And that was part of your identity.
Yeah. Because it's part of who I am. It's such a core part of it.
Right. A specific part of your identity was being on the fringe of what's cool and what's accepted. And now that sort of has flip-flopped, I would say a little, but it's a lot. And so now you're like, wait a minute, why did I spend my entire life not being cool? And then now this is cool? I don't have time for this to be cool. Now I'm an adult.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got responsibilities. Yeah, exactly.
It's very strange because part of me is like, yeah, don't look at me.
I wish y'all could have seen that. That was amazing.
Whereas another part of me is like, please thrust me into the limelight. Please, like, let this be okay for people. Please, like, let's talk about this. It's just hard, especially when you hear other people, like, trying to talk about, am I a nerd? I don't know if I'm a nerd. Like, trying to play around with that space and, like, figure out what label of nerd fits them when the label of nerd is becoming so broad and different that it's like, I don't know, it's a weird space that I'm still figuring out my comfort level in as nerd culture becomes more mainstream. Because I like it. Like, it means I have more people to play games with. It means I have more people who I can teach D&D and board games and comic books. That's stuff that I really like to do. But I don't know. It's a weird masochistic thing. Like, put me back in my hole.
Right. It feels uncomfortable. You're like, this is not the jacket I've been wearing my whole life. Who's got my jacket?
Yeah, who's got my jacket?
I think nerd is almost a verb now, right? Like you nerd out over this and you're nerding out about that.
Geek is still the word we got to work on. Geeking out is still not the greatest thing. Because like the geek versus nerd like word use is a really interesting space to now. You could do a whole podcast lecture series on geek versus nerd as terminology.
Oh, no, I couldn't. You could. Hey, why don't you have a podcast? You're so great at talking and you're so knowledgeable. Why don't you have a podcast?
It's just a lot of work. I don't have to tell you that it's a lot of work.
Oh my God, it's so much work, dude. Oh my God.
I get it. It's a labor of love. I get that, like, it's an important thing to do in an important medium that exists. But at a certain point, I'm like, I have to choose what I love to do and what I want to do and what my time allows me to do and find a balance in all that. I'm not saying I'm never going to have one, but right now it's just not the right space for me. And I'm still getting used to being famous. Like, I'm not McConaughey levels of famous, clearly, but there's a level of notoriety I have that I've never had before that it's taking some getting used to. I have a lot of friends who want to start podcasts with me, but what I'm really enjoying right now is like bouncing around between podcasts and learning about this space and like getting to learn from people like you and people like other podcasters and getting to see how it's done and the questions people ask and getting to just be in the space and have fun in the space is really exciting for me. But I'm still dipping my toes in. I'm still trying to see like what I like, what I don't like, and figuring out sort of where I can fit in the space.
Well, good for you. But can you tell everybody where they can find you on social media?
Yes, I am on Twitter at NotVyasarG. That's the best place you can find me. I usually put a tweet out every day or every other day. There are several fake Twitter accounts of me. Do not go to @Ganesan Vyasar. That's a fake one. I am not on Instagram, so any Instagram account of me that you find is not me. If you want to read some of my writing, you can go to vyasarwrites.com. That's VYASAR, writes, WRITES.com. You can find a lot of my writing linked there.
What do you write?
So I did this whole series on Game of Thrones from seasons 5, I want to say, onward.
Are these reviews?
Just reviews, yeah, for weekly episode reviews. So you can go to myentertainmentworld.ca. That's a great place to read all my writing. I did a bunch of reviews for Game of Thrones. I reviewed Plays in the Park. I reviewed Spider-Man to the Spider-Verse, Legally Blonde. I've got a bunch of different reviews on that site. So if you want to see like my thoughts on media and TV and film, there's a lot of good content up there.
All right, you're a nerd, right?
Yeah, I'm a nerd.
Okay, so I'm sure you've seen this because all nerds have, and this is the only crossover that I have with nerds. I'm sure it's not. But have you seen and or reviewed the sci-fi series Firefly?
Oh, I love Firefly. I watch Firefly at least once or twice a year at this point.
Good for you. Why don't you do a series on that? Oh, and by the way, I actually don't live in San Antonio. I live in Bernie.
Oh, nice.
And guess who also lives here? You're going to shit your pants, dude.
Who lives in Bernie?
Are you wearing clean pants?
I'm wearing clean underwear. I just took a shower.
Summer Glau lives here.
What?
River lives here, dude.
River lives in Bernie?
That's correct. I ran into her at the post office, and I was like, do you want to be on my podcast? And she was like, security. But nah, she lives here, man. Isn't that crazy?
That's really cool. No, I've never done a series on that. That would be fun. I feel like Firefly would be a really fun series to pick apart, especially because like the space western as a genre has really started to come to people's attention again. It's a really neat genre.
I think that it is ripe for your writing, sir.
If you want a little more of a toe dip into nerd culture, there's a great anime series called Cowboy Bebop that's also a space western.
Where's that? Is that on Netflix or wherever, streaming somewhere?
That's on, I think it's on Hulu.
Okay, Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, it's worth it. Trust me, it's a really, really good series.
All right. Well, Vyasar Ganesan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and your hectic work schedule to hang out and let us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street, man. I super appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. It's awesome getting to do this, and we had a lot of fun.
Oh, my God, I had so much fun. Like, I'm not kidding. I could do this 3-4 more hours, but that can't happen. But maybe, and by maybe I mean definitely, we'll have you back. We'll chat again.
Yeah.
And for sure, the next time I'm headed up to Austin and it's not COVID where I got to wear a hazmat suit to be around anybody, I'm definitely going to hit you up and say, bro, let's go get a coffee.
Yeah, let's do it. That'd be
or
fun.
a tea. You drink tea, right? Let's go get a tea.
I actually don't drink tea.
Jesus
I don't drink tea or
Christ.
coffee.
You're killing me,
I
bro.
don't know. I'll go get a hot cocoa.
Let's go get a water.
Yeah. I will go to Juice Land. We'll go to Juice Land and we'll get some smoothies.
All right, great. Again, thank you so much, man. It was such a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm over the moon. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
man.
very much.
Everyone listen to this man's podcast.
Yes, this man is the name of my new show. No, just, yeah, that's me. One of the things that I like about you on the show and here tonight is that you have what can only be described as a zest for life. You are one of the happiest people I've ever seen on screen, both my big screen and my little screen. You seem like you really enjoy just being.
I'll tell you the secret.
What is it?
Painting miniatures.
Oh, you son of a bitch. Oh, you son of a bitch. That's amazing. Now I have to put that in. I can't leave that out. That was so good. Oh, that's fantastic. Nicely done, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. That means a lot.
All right, cool, man. Thank you so much. You have a great night.
You too, man. Take it easy.
All right, bye-bye. As always, thanks for listening, Streetwalkers. And don't forget, follow the show on Twitter at FascinationSTPD, on Instagram at Fascination Street Pod. Follow the podcast page on Facebook at Fascination Street Podcast. And of course, you can always email me at fascinationstreetpod@gmail.com. And if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and rate us on iTunes. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.